One of the things that Rick Santorum proposed while running for president, back when it looked like he might have a real chance at the nomination, was that we should kind of sell Idaho. This is what it was like this year in the Republican primary. This was the difference between the two main alternatives to Mitt Romney in the Republican Party. Newt Gingrich wanted to acquire the moon as the 51st state in the union. Not kidding. Rick Santorum, on the other side, wanted to divest ourselves of most of Idaho. All the federally controlled land in Idaho he wanted to sell. Now, Rick Santorum is not going to be the Republican nominee for president, but imagine that he was. In fact, I think this is a useful thought experiment. Imagine that Rick Santorum not only got nominated, but he won the general election. Imagine President Santorum. And imagine that as President Santorum, he decided to follow through on his campaign promise to sell Idaho, to sell off the federally owned, publicly owned parts of that state. And as President Rick Santorum decides that he's going to figure out what the taxpayers have spent on those lands, what our public national investment has been there. And then he's going to sell that land for 99% off that price, essentially giving it away, 99% off. And then, after he's done being president and done selling off our national property for cheap, now that he is an ex-president, he's going to go into business with the new owner of Idaho. He's going to go into business with the person he sold our land to, with a scheme to make money off that property that he sold for pennies on the dollar. He's now got himself on both sides of the deal that took what we owned. We got paid 1% of what we'd put into it, but he's now going to get rich off it personally based on what he did in office. That would be crazy, right? I mean, that would be even crazier than just the idea of President Rick Santorum. There's not going to be a President Rick Santorum. But that process that I just described really has just happened in Michigan, in Pontiac, Michigan, a city that may be more notable these days for what it has lost than for what it still has. The Detroit Lions used to play in Pontiac's Silverdome Arena. They left. The GM truck factory in town left. GM used to make the car called Pontiac here, but that's gone too, the factory and the whole brand. The city of Pontiac, Michigan is so broke, so down on its luck, that 3 years ago, the state of Michigan appointed an emergency manager with nearly unilateral authority to run the town. The Los Angeles Times at the time suggested thinking of that emergency manager as something of an unelected king. After a few months on the job, that unelected king decided to sell Pontiac's biggest asset, the publicly owned Pontiac Silverdome. He decided to sell it in 2009, in the middle of the worst downswing of the Great Recession. When the emergency manager proposed auctioning off this public asset, the Pontiac City Council said basically, are you crazy? You're going to try to sell this thing in this economy? It is the worst possible time to sell. They voted against it unanimously. But in Michigan, once the state takes over your city with an emergency manager, the elected officials have no power anymore. The Pontiac City Council's unanimous vote against selling the Silverdome meant zero, meant zip. The unelected king, the emergency manager guy, put it up for sale anyway, despite that vote. He put it up for sale with ads like this one.
The field has seen monster truck rallies, soccer games. If it can happen on a field, it can happen here.
Out here at the Silverdome, we have anything ranging from your dirt shows, snowcross shows, home and garden shows, trade shows, concerts, all the way down to anything you would like to do on top of a football field. Soccer, flag football, indoor football, arena football. You could have lacrosse down there.
Up to anything you want and more. We'll help you. That was the message from the emergency manager as he sold the Publix Silverdome.
Of course, if the new owner has other ideas for Silverdome and the land on which it stands, the city of Pontiac says they are fully supportive.
The reason we want to sell without reserve is that we don't want to exclude any potential bidders. We want people to think out of the box, to be as creative as possible, to use this site for the best possible use that they would like to bring forward. This is an excellent location and will be a great value for potential bidders.
Citizens of Pontiac had spent about $55 million building the Silverdome in the mid-1970s. In 2009, under the genius no-reserve auction idea, in the middle of the worst part of the recession, the arena sold for just over half of $1 million to a Canadian real estate zillionaire. He paid 1% of what it cost Pontiac to build it. And still, the Silverdome sat mostly empty for years. Last month, that emergency manager, the guy who sold it, that emergency manager's name surfaced again in Pontiac. The local paper reports on an effort to expand casino gambling in Michigan, including at Pontiac Silverdome. They're trying to get an amendment on the ballot in November so they can turn the Pontiac Silverdome, now owned by the Canadian zillionaire, into a casino for him. Among the people trying to bring the casino gambling to Silverdome is the former emergency manager, the guy who sold Pontiac Silverdome for a song and who now represents in business the Canadian guy he sold it to, with whom he is now working to pass the gambling amendment. So, metaphorically speaking, back to the thought experiment here, this would be like fake President Santorum using his power as president to sell Idaho for 99% off, and now he's in business with the guy he sold it to for a song, and now they can use that land to get rich themselves off of it. Pontiac used to have a thing called the Silverdome. One guy made the decision to give it away for basically no money, and now he is in business to make some real money off it privately for himself. Heh, suckers. A spokeswoman for this former emergency manager tells us that he met the new owner of the Silverdome, the Canadian zillionaire guy, only after he sold him the stadium. She says the emergency manager has only been working for the guy now since January. She also says the casino will be great for Pontiac. They'll get tax revenue from it. Maybe this historic sale of a huge, important public asset was a great deal for Pontiac. The best way to sell it at the best price, the best opportunity, I can't say. That's something for the people of Pontiac to decide. It's their asset. It belongs to them. But they did not get a say. They did not get a vote on that. They, at their city council, got the opportunity to have a meaningless, symbolic protest vote because the state took away their power to decide things for themselves. When the city council took that symbolic, unanimous vote not to sell the Silverdome, you know, they actually predicted almost exactly how little the stadium would sell for in a no-reserve open auction. They were right. But their foresight and their vote meant nothing because the state had given one guy unilateral authority to do whatever he wanted with the assets of Pontiac. And what he wanted to do, it turns out, may end up being a great deal for him. And it's not just this one town. Pontiac and Detroit and a lot of other places in Michigan have trouble, major financial trouble. But why is the solution to those problems to get rid of democracy, to get rid of elected officials, to get rid of the quaint American idea that we vote for elected officials to represent us, to make decisions about what is best for our towns? Why is unilateral authority by one person better? Is democracy a problem in America now? Is it a bad system of government? Is it too risky when the going gets rough? Does it only work in rich places? Is Pontiac better off for having its fate in the hands of the guy who made this deal instead of the city council that wouldn't have done it this way? Earlier this year, these Michiganders turned in enough signatures in a petition drive to put Republican Governor Rick Snyder's radically expanded emergency manager law up for a citizen's repeal. Then last month, Republicans on a state elections board threw those hundreds of thousands of signatures out. They said they could not be sure that the type was large enough. They could not be sure that the font size on one part of the petition might be big enough. And so with worrying about that, they decided to throw out all those signatures. Doesn't matter that they got enough. The group trying to overturn the new radically expanded emergency manager law in Michigan is going to get a hearing on their appeal on the signatures issue next week before a panel of elected judges. The case, people in Michigan tell us, will almost surely end up in the state Supreme Court, where the judges are elected and they come with party ties. As if their struggle were not hard enough, Michigan's Republican governor, Rick Snyder, has now filed a friend of the court brief telling the court to protect the emergency manager law that he says he considers central to his governance. If the people are allowed to vote on what happens to them, that is apparently in the way of what he wants to do in Michigan, what he wants to do to Michigan, what he wants to do for Michigan for their own good. Michael Moore joins us next.
When buying the Silverdome at auction in November, you get far more than just a world-renowned stadium and the 127.5 acres of prime real estate on which it sits.
Of course, if the new owner has other ideas for Silverdome and the land on which it stands, the city of Pontiac says they are fully supportive.
The reason we want to sell without reserve is that we don't want to exclude any potential bidders. We want people to think out of the box, to be as creative as possible, to use this site for the best possible use that they would like to bring forward. This is an excellent location and will be a great value for potential bidders.
You can be a part of this historic auction of the Pontiac Silverdome.
Joining us now for the interview is Michael Moore, the filmmaker and author and a Michigander down to the bill on his ball cap. Mr. Moore, nice to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you.
You know, for many months, I have been reporting on Michigan, and every time I finish reporting on something going on in Michigan, I ask what the Sam Hill is up in Michigan. The Republican rescue plan for the towns and cities in Michigan that are in trouble is that you have to first stop local democracy. Then you can get to work on fixing these things.
Right. We have to burn down the village in order to save it.
Yes. But whether or not it is, we'll get to where that comes from, why they want to do it that way. But does it work? I mean, Flint's had an emergency manager.
Yeah, we already did this in the last decade. Flint already did it. It didn't do any good, in part because the emergency was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
The emergency is long past. I mean, our peak employment was 1978. It's been downhill ever since. So Flint and the state of Michigan has been going 34 years now through this.
But there's this sort of technocratic idea, like, where there's big problems or there's big challenges, democracy is too slow or too inefficient or something. One person acting unilaterally can really get it done, can really fix it. There's this idea that it works, whether or not it's right.
Right. Yeah. Because if it worked, then people would kind of go, well, okay. Yeah. I guess it saved the state. But it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Flint didn't get any better. Pontiac's getting, as you pointed out, isn't getting any better. Detroit, Ecorse, Benton Harbor, the whole state. I mean, the whole state. It's not just those cities either. I mean, you could take this, if they continue with this, I mean, it's going to be more than just 10 entities that they're going to take over. But the problem here is that the state of Michigan is bankrupt. The state of Michigan is out of money. So I'm wondering if Governor Snyder, how he would feel if, say, tomorrow morning, President Obama said, you know, Michigan is in a depression. They're not able to pay their bills. Federal government's going to take over the state of Michigan. Yeah. Where would the Republicans be on that
I'm going to appoint a Michigan czar.
Yeah, a Michigan czar.
And overrule all local voting.
From Ohio.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Or even from Michigan. The idea that voting is what gets you in trouble. That's somehow the cause of problems that you need to stop in order to do it. I feel like it is a national, it's happening in Michigan. I feel like it's of national import. Right. And it's really hard to get everybody on board with this.
I know, but geez, I've been saying this now for, I don't know, umpteen years, it seems, that we're the laboratory. Michigan is capitalism's laboratory. And the experiments have not been going well for quite some time. We need, I mean, first of all, let me just say this about the emergency manager. I would, if I were the mayor of Flint, and when he took over Flint, I would just say, sorry, we're going to continue business today, just as we did yesterday. Yeah. Because I got to tell you something, Governor Snyder doesn't have a set of keys. Yeah. He can't get into City Hall. We need civil disobedience now in Michigan to stop this, first of all. The thing with the Silverdome, your lead-in story, I mean, of course, I've been to the Silverdome many times, and actually this year is the 25th anniversary of probably two of the greatest religious experiences that ever took place in the state of Michigan, and I was there for both of them. Pope John Paul II said Mass. I took my dad there to Mass, 93,000 people. Wow. And WrestleMania 3, Hulk Hogan body slammed Andre the Giant, and 93,000 people again for that. So this place is like sacred ground to us in Michigan. Yeah. But all kidding aside, $500,000, $500,000, you will have a hard time getting a studio apartment in New York City for that. That's how much.
But it was stunning to me.
Gave it away.
And go back and I went back and read the contemporaneous news coverage from the time that the emergency manager was selling it, and when the city council, which had no power at that point, it could be overruled by him, was saying no unanimously, don't do this, don't do it in a no reserve auction. They correctly predicted you're not going to get more than $500,000 for this thing. And the guy was like, "Oh, you're crazy." Right. And then sure enough, they were exactly right.
Right. What you said about it being a national problem, that really is the issue. I hope people just don't think this is about Michigan, because this is, I mean, the fact that we're not really broke. The country has money. It's just in the hands of a few people. And if we would stop these wars, I mean, we're still spending $2, $3, $4 billion a week on Afghanistan. I mean, seriously, I mean, if Michigan could just have like Monday and Tuesday of 1 week, just $1 billion, what would happen? I mean, the problems would be solved. But you know, I was just talking to your producer backstage here, and I said, what really has to happen is that we have to stop as a society allowing private corporations for letting them call all the shots. I mean, I know this is going to be a little strange to people because they think, well, no, Mike, GM has a right to do what they want. No, actually, they don't. We tell them to put airbags in the car. We tell them what the gas mileage has to be. Why can't we also tell them? I mean, we let them build crappy cars for 2 or 3 decades, and it killed us. It killed everybody I know lost their job. The state has suffered. When do we have a right as citizens to come in and say, you know what, you don't actually get to make all the decisions because they affect us? What you decide, even if it's right down to building a crappy car, you're not listening to the consumers, what they want. You just keep building this stuff. And here's the results of it. We, the people, pay for the results of higher crime, more divorce, alcoholism, drug abuse, suicide, all the social problems that go with massive unemployment. And that is what these auto companies did to the state of Michigan, to many other states. And I think at some point, I know we're not going to fix this year, but some point down the road, we, the people, have got to say, we got to get more. I know this sounds like, socialism or communism to people, and of course, those words.
You say good morning and people hear communism.
I know. Yes, I know. But the last time I was here, the guy, you sent a guy to drive me back here, and I was a Chevy Suburban. And I said, I got in because, those things used to be horrible machines of metal and everything rattled and the dome light didn't work. And I said, wow, this is really a nice car. Yeah. What happened? And he says, well, ever since the government took over, they're building a better car. Well, what does that say? So more of that, more government intervention, more stimulus, the right kind, as you said at the beginning of the show. And, maybe we'll have a chance. But, man, it's we've really had it kicked out of us in Michigan. And I know a lot of people in other states have, too. So we can't be defeated by this.
Michael Moore, filmmaker, author, proud Michigander. It's always really good to see you, Michael. Thank you.
Good to see you. Thank you so much, Rachel.
All right.